Thank you.
And Sarah McKeithen will record her talk. And so without further ado, I'm very honored to introduce.
Thank you, Prudence. Thank you. And I'm honored to be here. This is such a wonderful venue, and I'm really pleased that Prudence has taken me under her wing and gives me this place to be able to share my work with everyone. So my last show 2 years ago, I had a talk prepared and I had all my outline points and I kept it here and I tried to follow it religiously. This year, we're just going to wing it. Okay, we're just going to wing it, and we're gonna talk about whatever moves us today. So this show is called Relics of the Desert, and as you guys have not, if you haven't figured it out yet, I am quite taken with, and my affinity is to the sharp and spiny things, and a few of the avian friends that you do see in the desert as well. So the show is about the things that I see. So for me, these are relics that I see in the desert that I bring back with me and that I treasure. The premiere piece for the show is, and you'll see it on the front of the exhibit catalog, it is in the advertisements, it is also on the postcards, is this painting here. It is called A Revolution in Entropy. So this painting and this painting here, Transfiguration, they represent a new direction that I'm taking with a couple of series together. The series began as the Entropy series, which was focused on the dead and decaying portions of the leaves of the agave. You know, because after they bloom, like you can see in Panther Generations at Panther Junction here, this long one here in the middle with the purple background. Those are 3 agave at Panther Junction in Big Bend National Park, and it is 3 generations. So you have the agave that has bloomed and passed on, and it is dried and desiccated. You have the one in the pinnacle of its life blooming, and then you have the little pup off to the side. And so I became very enamored with the dead and drying forms, because when you look at them, you'll see some of them have like a wood grain-like texture as they dry. And some of them actually have a pattern in them. And so that's where I was taken, was with this pattern. So I began with this one, Transfiguration. This was actually a tiny little agave, maybe about this big, on Highway 90 in Marfa. It was a tiny little thing, and it had the most exquisite patterns on its leaves. And I had been using metallic leaf in some of my paintings prior to this in my Lost Mine series. So I basically took the Entropy series, which focuses on the dead and drying parts, and then my Lost Mine series, which focuses on precious metals, and brought them together. And so I started using metal leaf that actually has a pattern embedded in it. And you'll notice that it's not one particular piece that's just one solid piece. I do piece them together to kind of give it a more organic pattern, so that it's not just, you know, little circles or what have you. So Transfiguration is about the transfiguration of the leaves. And so this was the first one into that series. And then this one is the second. And this agave is actually in my front yard. It is a Mr. Ripple agave. And the second freeze that we had, I think it was, what, 22, 23? It wasn't the big one. It wasn't the big one in 20. It was the one after that, 22. And this guy just got nipped pretty bad. And so the ends of it were, you know, prematurely dried and decaying. And so I really liked the way that this one, if it's the same metal leaf, this one reflects green and this one reflects blue. So if you look at the two of them and you look at the metal leaf, you'll almost think they're different, but they're not. It's just what they reflect. So this is actually an evolution, and that's what the series is called, is the evolution series of the two coming together of Entropy, or Dead and Dying, and the Lost Mine and Precious Metals, and that's those coming together. The Lost Mine series, this one does have 2 paintings that are here. This one here is Cinnabar Crucibles. And if you don't have one of the exhibit catalogs, a lot of the stories that I'm going to tell you are in this catalog, which Sarah and Prudence put together so beautifully. But the Cinnabar Crucibles is on the Lost Mine Trail in Big Bend National Park. And it's about not only the agave that are there at altitude, which is the Havartiana, but also this opuntia that had bloomed, and we had the pears, the prickly pears. And the reason I called it Cinnabar Crucibles is in Big Bend, in Terlingua specifically, there's a long history of mining, particularly in Terlingua, and they mined cinnabar, which is smelted for mercury. And so cinnabar in its natural state is red. And so what I imagined is, and I kind of harkened back to my college days and when I took quantitative chemistry, and you had to like burn things down in little crucibles and measure it, which I never measured right. Nobody did. We were all just fumbling around. But what I did is I actually put the silver leaf into the tops of those. And so that's why they are the cinnabar crucibles. And so that silver leaf is to represent the mercury that is smelted from the cinnabar. There is another painting that is around the corner here called Fool's Gold, and it has a gold pastel background. So some of my paintings will have metal leaf in them. This one has metal leaf, and also this one over here. This is another one in the Evolution series. This is Spanish bayonet, and it has the metallic pieces on the tips of that yucca leaf. But on that is the metal leaf, and then also liquid metal acrylic paint that I use for outlines. And then on this side there is one called Fool's Gold. No, it's not here. I know it's here somewhere. Where is Fool's Gold? Is it? Oh, there it is, right there actually. Yeah, it's there's a set of 3 paintings there up in the corner, and it is the one that's in the middle. And what I learned, for those of you that are pastelists and artists here, one of the things that I learned in working with pan pastels, which are pastels that are compressed into like a compact of powder, like face powder, they do beautiful iridescence. But what I learned with this painting here, Serpentine Verdigris, and it was one of those Bob Ross happy accident sort of things, I got really frustrated with the background on that painting. And I took a wet washcloth and I wiped it out, and I didn't even think about it, and the board was still wet where I had wiped it down. And then I applied the pan pastel over it, and it laid down so well, so much more vividly than when it's dry. Because basically all of the pastel is melted because it's wet, and so it flattens it out as opposed to being more crystalline and flaky. So that's why you get a much better shine when you wet it down first and then and it was a complete accident. And so that's Fool's Gold, has the wet background with the pan pastel applied to it. So those are a lot. That is the Evolution and Lost Mine series painting. And then there's one in here and is called Remember You Are Dust. And what I do, I often revisit paintings when I like an image, and I'll do them in different sizes. I will do them in different orientations. And what I really liked about this one, Remember You Are Dust, I did a small one that was about that size called From Dust Thou Art. Then I did a really large one called And Unto Dust Shalt Thou Return. And now this one is Remember You Are Dust. And with these, I explored, I work on gator board, which is a wood veneer board, and I pumice it. I used golden fine pumice gel that I tint it with sumi ink, so I get an extra black background. And so what I have learned is you can apply, I apply a base coat first that gives me kind of more of a commercial texture that's very smooth, almost like an orange peel texture. But then I've learned that you can also apply it, and while it's still wet, you can do things to it. And so I've carved into it, and so that one, Remember You Are Dust, has carving into it so that I could represent the wood grain texture that the agave leaves create. And then I've also done in that series, in that Entropy series, I've done this one that's right here, the gold one. And that's one that I've revisited several times. So if you were here 2 years ago, there was a much larger version of that one at 32 by, no, it wasn't much larger, 6 inches square. So 32 by 32, but the image is reversed. And with this one, I revisited it in a smaller form, 24 by 24, and then flipped it. But with this one, I used metallic pastel in the background. There was one in between that I did as a commission for a physician here in San Antonio, and it was 5 feet tall by 4 feet wide. And that's so I may take an image and stretch it digitally and see what it does. And so that one came out really nicely, and we did the living version, the dead version, and then we did the living version of the same plant, and it was a series called Wanted Dead or Alive. And so she has the two of them hanging right next to each other. Yeah. So let's go from Texas. Well, there's a little more to do in Texas here. So yeah, a lot of Texas. I live here, right? So these two prickly pear over there, or Opuntia, the one on the bottom is called On the Precipice of Modesta Canyon. And Modesta Canyon is at the Chihuahua Desert Research Institute in Fort Davis. I do a lot of hiking, and this time I was with my cousin who came with me. We went to deliver some paintings in Marfa for a show I had there in the summer. And we went over to the Research Institute, and we took a hike, and didn't really notice the part of the trail that says canyon. And I don't do edges. I don't like, I mean, I don't mind being high, but I don't like edges. Well, we had to press on because once we realized where we were, and it was either you go on or you go back. And it's like, well, we're going to go on. And so we did. And this Opuntia was hanging out on this kind of red rock. And it was on an extreme angle, and it's in a canyon, and the sun hit it just right. And those golden grasses behind it were just on fire, and it was just magnificent. And it had been very dry, and so it was really giving a lot of color into those prickly pear pads. The one above it is Big Bend State Park. How I know where these places, I don't know why I remember them, but I do. But that was Big Bend State Park, and that one is called Winter Color in West Texas, and that is also an Opuntia. So very dry, very cold, and you get those colors. So they really do light up that color in real life, and they're just lovely. So let's go from Texas to Sedona. I spent my milestone birthday in Sedona last year. And I knew there were agave there, but I didn't know where. I Googled and Googled and Googled, but I couldn't figure out where they were. Well, lo and behold, the first trail that we went on was Cathedral Rock Trail, and there they were, and it was fantastic. So this painting that's right above Anne here, there's two of them. It's the one on the top. That is called Basking in the Sedona Sun. So if you've seen Sedona or you've been there, you know the rock is extremely red, very, very red. And these are agave parii, and a lot of people know the parii variant of truncata. We see those a lot here in Texas, the little truncated little artichoke agave. Same genus, but just a different kind of species, and that one is very straight and really light blue, and just a beautiful light blue turquoise against that red rock, and just absolutely magnificent. And if you've been to Sedona or you've heard of Sedona, people talk about the vortices there, you know, the energy vortices. And there's four. There's Cathedral Rock, Bell Rock, the Mesa, Airport Mesa, and Boynton Canyon. So there's a painting that's around the corner here that has metallic acrylic in it, and it's based on the four vortices. And so I have some symbology of vortices, which are spirals. And then between these spirals that are on the border of this painting is some wavy lines, and those represent the energy. Let's see, so we were in Sedona. What else is from Sedona here? Pretty sure there was another one. Well, I think that's it for Sedona. Is it this one over here? Yes, there's this one here. There's this one here, which is turning at Cathedral Rock. And there's one out in the front window called the Parishioners at Cathedral Rock. And it's a little group of agave together. And I thought, well, they're here at the cathedral. What are they doing together? Oh, well, they're parishioners. So, yes, so my Catholic nature showing through. Yeah, a little Catholic, yeah, Catholic school, the whole 9 yards, yes. I have the scars to prove it. I'm totally teasing. But I did spend a lot of time in the corner. I did. Yeah, hands out with the ruler, yes. So then there's also some pieces here, some agave that are from Phoenix. This one here in the corner that has the kind of The poor Anne can't seem to, I keep going right to Anne. So it's kind of got that adobe colored background. And one of the questions that I get a lot at art festivals or talks like this is, how long does it take you to do a painting? That's the age-old question. And it's like, well, I would say probably about 11 or 12 years, because that's how long I've been working in pastel. And I can't tell you this painting took me, or this painting because it is large, it will take me this long, and this one because it is small will take me this long. There is no relationship between size and time. It's based on, am I in the zone? Did I hold my mouth right? Are the planets in the proper alignment, sort of thing? Because some paintings I will fight with, and I just have to put them off to the side and not talk to them for a while, put them in the corner. And then I come back to them, and then we dance and we're fine. That one, we went down to the mat. I mean, that one, because if you look at a lot of my paintings, you'll see they tend to be lower key, meaning they tend to be darker, richer colors. That's a very high key painting. So a lot of lighter colors, and so that was a departure for me. So I think that's why I struggled with that one a little bit. And I also struggled with getting the pumice out of the jar, and yeah, the stories in the book. Some paintings I struggle with. This guy, this big guy here with the dark rust-colored background and the green agave with the yellow margins. I love this agave. I would love to have them here in Texas, but they are too tender and they freeze. But I just love the undulations that they have in their leaves. And this one, I thought about calling it Take a Left in Albuquerque. But it really, when I realized it's not pointing in any direction at all. And so that's why it's called Which Way Did They Go? Because I don't know which way they went. But we'll go ahead, and he's pointing off to the left here, so we'll go on over here to these birds and these ocotillos. So one of the other things that I see when I'm out in the desert a lot is birds. And starting from the left, the little guy with the yellow head is the tiniest, fastest little bird, and he is so hard to photograph. You have to be on sports mode, and you got to follow him, and you just got to let that shutter fly. And he's just really fast. That is a verdin, and he has a little red patch on his wing, and he has a beautiful little yellow head. I was looking for them in the Phoenix Desert Botanical Garden, and I've seen them in West Texas also, but I actually had one photobomb me. I really did. I was taking a photograph of a cactus wren pulling, a barrel cactus in the middle has this fluffy stuff, and it was pulling fluffy stuff for its nest, and I'm just shooting this cactus wren, and then a few photos have this little verdin like dive bombing him. I never saw him. Never saw him. He was that fast. They were very, very fast. So the one in the middle with the two jays, those are called, some people call them scrub jays, some people call them woodhouse scrub jay, some people call them Chisos jay. I call them the Chisos jay because it is in the Chisos Basin in Big Bend National Park, and this one is called the window greeters, kind of like the Walmart greeters. If you've ever hiked the window trail in Big Bend, up in the Chisos, at the very end of the trail where the drop-off is, where the water goes off, these guys congregate at the end because the hikers stop there, of course, because that's the end of the trail, and everybody breaks out the snacks and the kind bars and the granola bars, and they are very, very social, and they are not bashful about coming up to you and saying, "Can I have some of that, please?" So those are the Chisos jays. And then last is the desert cardinal, or Pyrrhuxia. I think I'm saying that right. I'm not sure. I'm not perfect on that one. And I just love that guy. He's just so beautiful. And that guy was in Terlingua. We have a VRBO that we have stayed in year after year after year, and I just absolutely love it. It's on 65 acres, and it's surrounded by the Corazones Mountains. And this guy's just lovely, and he always tends to sit either on the very top of like a Sotal bloom or on the Ocotillo, and he's just magnificent. And that painting is called Quien es más rojo? And so it's like, who's redder? Is it me or is it the Ocotillo? Yeah, so that's that guy. And then on the subject of Ocotillo down at the bottom, those are drawings that I did on location in Terlingua of Ocotillo in various states of bloom. So the one in the middle is in full bloom. The one on the left it was interrupted. It's like it looks like it wanted to bloom, but it didn't. It just dried and stopped. My guess is it had been, because the ocotillo generally look dead until it rains, and then they put on all their leaves, and then in a matter of weeks, then the leaves are gone, and we're back to dead again. So some people kind of call it like a resurrection bush, kind of like the resurrection fern. But yeah, so I'm guessing that one just didn't make it and just ran out of water. And then on the far side is an ocotillo bloom that had bloomed and then went to husks and opened, and the seeds released. And I think of the three of them, I think the husk one is the one I like the best. I really do. I don't know why, but that's the one that I like, that really resonates with me. Oops, and I probably did bad things because I touched my microphone, so I apologize. And then there are a couple of other birds around the corner here. When we're done here, you'll find a raven. His name is Lost Mine Nevermore. He is also on the Lost Mine Trail, and he's at the very top of the trail. And they hang out, these ravens hang out up there on these weathered cedar branches. And they're frequent flyers up there because I see people post pictures of these guys up there all the time. I think it's kind of the same reason as the Chisos jays. That's where you stop. It's the pinnacle of the trail. You sit, you rest, and then you go back down, and you have kind bars and whatnot. So I think that's why he's there. And then there is one owl that I put in here. It's a barn owl, and they do live in the desert. Although I've never seen one myself in the desert, but it's a barn owl on a Catalina goat skull. And this Catalina goat skull is a gift. Yes, I thought this was the best thing in the world. It's a gift from my nephew. And he found this goat skull stuck in a barbed wire fence. Yeah, it's a sad story, but I feel like it's been rescued, and now it's in paintings, and it's going to be memorialized. And so this particular painting is called The Grace of Transition. There was a woman that I worked with from Egypt, and I think other cultures believe this too, but they feel that the owl is kind of that harbinger of there may be a death coming. And so it's kind of like the animal totem that takes you to the other side. And so that's why it's called the Grace of Transition. And so it's there to protect the Catalina goat. Yeah. And then last but not least, right under the Relics of the Desert title here are three paintings called the De la Frontera series. And they resemble rugs, patterned after what I've seen in Zapotec rugs or Native American rugs. And these actually do have a rug texture to them. So similar to what I talked about working in the gesso while it's wet, I had to find the right tool to create a rug texture. Yeah, so go take a look at those, and you'll see on the top and the bottom is a rug-like texture, and then in the middle it's more of a regular smooth texture. But I started with the red one on the left. That is De la Frontera Uno. So it's a play on the frontera being the border, so the rug borders, but I'm also from the border, from Laredo. And so I did Uno first, and I'm really drawn to like those beautiful red rugs with the dark, accents. And then I did De la Frontera Dos, but it is not the one that's in the middle. It's the one on the far right, the beige one. Okay. You'll notice that they both have blue agave on them. I did the first one on January 12th, and the other one was like January 20th. So I did those two really close together. But then I paused. I couldn't figure out what to do with the third one. And so I finally came up with the color pattern that I wanted to do for the third one. It was finished in March. And with the turquoise background, I felt like a yellow agave. A desiccated agave would be the right one, but the way that they hung it didn't look right to have 1, 2, 3, so that's why it's uno, tres, dos. So yeah, it just goes to show that, sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. You just got to go with the flow, like we did today. So, questions? Yes, ma'am.
So you're kind of a magician, I think. So there's this interesting joining of the scientific, the faith, the magical. So I was really interested when you said chemistry were part of your studies, but so much of your language and your art are permeated by the language of faith. Trios, spirals, transfiguration, transformation. I find that very incredible, and probably why it speaks to all of us in the room.
Well, thank you.
So that's so exciting as an inspiration for your art. So do
No.
The fake, the scientific.
No.
The natural. So, I mean, alchemists again being.
Alchemy
and
being
as
the
soon as you said spiral, I'm like, oh, alchemy.
yeah.
So I find that fascinating.
Well, I've always been interested in the spiral motif. And so like when I recently got back from a trip to Utah and took my husband to see Parowan Gap because he had not seen that. And the petroglyphs there are amazing. And of course you often see the spiral motif in the petroglyphs. And you see them not only in the southwestern United States, you see them in South America, you see them everywhere, right? So it's a universal language is the spiral, right? The science is what I studied in school. And I did not, and it's something that I also say in the biography that's at the back of the exhibit catalog. Although I've always had an artistic aptitude, I drew from the time I was really little. My mother would put me outside under the tangerine trees and say, here's a pad, go away for a while. And I was entertained for hours and hours and hours. But I was not encouraged to study art. And I did dance for a while. I auditioned for the Joffrey Ballet at one point, which, little short squatty people really doesn't work very well. So we got that out of the way really early in life. So I wasn't encouraged to follow the art, but I ended up in the sciences. And so that's why I studied a lot of biology and chemistry and biochemistry and those sorts of things. And then, as life would have it, I ended up in the software industry for my corporate job, which I have now finished, and now I do this full time. But I've never really noticed, the faith, I think, I went to Catholic school for many, many years, was raised Catholic, as many of us did, yes. So, but, I think that, one of the things that I think that I do recognize is that we as artists we're imitators. For me, especially as an artist who tends to gravitate to the natural world and to the plant world, the bird world, that sort of thing. I'm only an imitator of the best artist of all. I'm just a poor facsimile in comparison to the real art that is the world around us. Do I create my own pigments? No, I buy them commercially.
Yeah, okay. Some of these are really, I don't know.
Ludwig was my top one. They actually did commission me to do a painting for one of their advertisements in Pastel Journal.
Some of these blues and golds, I haven't seen those.
No, Ludwig has fabulous golds. Really, yeah. In fact, that gold series and these blue ones. The one that they had me commission a painting for was their Best of the Blues series. But that one is more strong cobalt blues and turquoise blues. There's not a lot of these gray blues in it, but they have a wonderful, wonderful array there. But I do like, and they have really good darks, really, really good darks. Of course, V100, eggplant, yeah, everybody's favorite. But Unison also has a fabulous range of darks. Absolutely fabulous range of darks. And Ludwig actually has a commercial set called the Red Rocks series, and it's got a lot of these really great colors in it too. Yeah. Thank you.
Annalise, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a minute.
Okay.
I am always in the world of death and end of life and what all that means as a chaplain for patients going through the process of what most people would think is darkness and then arriving at seeing the light. I see that so much in your work, and I'm
Thank
so
you.
attracted to it because of that. And I'm wondering, do you have an awareness of how healing this is for you as you settle into this darkness in the background of your paintings, your pastels, and then bring out this light for all of us? But what is this doing for you?
I think all artists, to a degree, or at least artists who tend to go towards more realism, I think we chase light. It's always about how can I portray the light. You know, and is the light shining here? Is it coming from the left? Is it coming from the right? You know, where is that light coming from? And if you can get that inner glow in a painting and drive the focus not only to it from a compositional perspective, but also from the light and the contrast as well, I think that's really, really important. I have had the opportunity to have both my mother and father in hospice. And I was with my mother when she passed. And I was watching something just recently, and it said that death is actually not death. It's not the end. It's actually a cure. It's a cure for the condition that we live in. Yeah. So this particular person in this thing that I was watching was talking a little bit about, they had cancer. And they were talking about, oh, well, you know, I could fight chemo, and then, you know, she says, you know, but the death it's a cure, and then it's over, right? You know, and we go to the other side and we check out what's next, right? Because it's a journey. It's a journey. And I am working on a new series of paintings. And it's so interesting that you brought that up, because it's not something that was intentional. I think it's just kind of where the journey takes us. When I had my show in Marfa Agave Alchemy, Mi Gente Tequila sponsored the reception. So obviously tequila makers agave, you know how all that goes. But he told the story, the Aztec folktale of Mayahuel and Patecato and the 400 rabbits. And I was absolutely fascinated with it. And so I'm kind of going into that, and I found some motifs, and I didn't realize that one of the motifs is actually, I thought it was a sun. No, it's actually the god of the underworld. And so, but I thought it was really interesting, you know, because it's something that, you know, talks about the underworld, and you know, it's like when you think about like the tarot, or you think about so many other, like, you know, 13 is a horrible number. No, it just means change. Or the death card means change. It doesn't mean the end. It just means it's a change coming. You know, so kind of like the owls, it's you know, they're not a harbinger of bad things, you know, they're a wonderful thing. They see in the dark.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Great question. Great observation. Both great observations. Things I'd never really thought about. I just do it unconsciously.
So do you see a series and then you fill it in? You know, you call the one you're working on now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know
Where it ends?
what's
No.
going to be in that?
No. Mm-mm. I've always been taken with a quote that's been attributed to Picasso. It's like, and I don't know the exact way that it's worded, but it's something to the effect of inspiration has to find you working. Like people sit and they say, oh, well, you know, I'm going to wait and I'm going to be inspired. You know, yeah, this is what my husband, the writer, does. He waits to be inspired. And it's like, no, you just got to start writing. And so he started just writing, and he's kind of pulling on his history as a child in California and growing up in the orange groves, kind of similar to I grew up in the tangerine groves in South Texas. But no, I don't know where they go. I have a general idea where I want to go with it, but then I just go with the flow.
So the title comes before the painting comes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
A moment ago, you were referencing these as paintings, but
Mm-hmm.
pastel
Is drawing.
right. So how do you differentiate?
And that's, you know, it's a big, you know, controversy, right, between people who paint with brushes and people who paint with their hands. So the thought is that if the surface or the board or the paper or whatever is completely covered 100%, they call it a painting, because it's completely covered with pigment. However, if it's something like the Zocotillo down there, that it's the paper that's brown and it's colored pencil, that is a drawing. But technically it is drawing, because I am working with my hands. There is nothing between me and the pigment. No. Mm-mm. Yeah, there is no paintbrush. Although, you know, I do use techniques where I wet it, you know, to move it around. And there's, you know, underpaintings that you do that's the same as you would with, you know, an acrylic or an oil or watercolor painting. There are underpaintings to them sometimes. Yeah. But I'm lazy, so I tend to work on colored boards, you know, so I'll color my background rather than do underpaintings. For a long time, when I first started in pastel about 12 years ago, I painted on untoned paper and would do an underpainting, and then I started painting on toned paper. Particularly, I like olive green, terracotta, burnt umber, and black. Those are my favorites.
A serious question. What do you name the birds?
What do you mean, do I name the birds?
Did you give them names?
Oh, do they have personal names? No. They're
Only
No.
the birds talk back to her.
no. They don't have personal names. Yeah, well, my mother actually named her Hummingbird. She had a hummingbird that came back every year, and she named him Thor. But no, I've never had any birds that I've named. Even though I do have frequent visitors, I have a little Rufus hummingbird that comes back to me every year. Yeah, so he comes around in the wintertime, and he's adorable. And poor that little guy was out there during those 2 ice storms, and I had heat lamps out there, and I was changing his juice every hour. So yeah, poor little guy. Yeah, but he made it. He made it.
So you talked about being in the zone.
The zone.
We all
We all want to be in the zone.
long for that.
Yeah,
And when you're in the zone, you do it so well and you lose all track of time.
absolutely.
And, the goal is, how do I make myself get into that
You
zone?
don't. I wish I could.
I wish you could.
I wish there was a formula for it, right? Yeah.
We're always chasing that.
Yeah.
But I always equate it to afterwards as like a high,
100%.
So amazing. And I don't know if it is that way for you,
Yes,
but
absolutely. It is. It's, I lose time. Like I will sometimes do a really large painting over just, like a series of 8 hours and not stop, because I'm in the zone, and it's like I'm almost afraid of stopping, because what if I come back to it tomorrow and I'm not in the zone? What's going to happen? Am I going to ruin it? So I will, pump down the caffeine and not eat. And yeah, I will deprive myself of food and just do caffeine just so that I can paint, because it's that addictive to me. Chasing that high, if you will. I tell some people, my husband especially, I say it's like an alien abduction. I don't know where I've been. I can't explain what happened. Hours go by. Yes. And you have no idea where the time went. And then you like open your eyes and it's like there's something there, and it's like, wow, where did this come from? Yeah. Yeah.
just stop cleaning house.
Yeah. There's no cleaning house. Yeah. No. But I think that it also kind of goes back to the word inspiration is actually a derivative in Latin of the spirit, right? And so what is inspiration? It is your spirit. And it also has to do with inspire, breathing, right? So I think for artists, it's like breathing for us to be able to be in the zone. Yeah. Hyper-oxygenated.
So that brings up the question, do you ever do any painting at night?
No.
Is it all during the day?
Mostly during the day, natural light. I'm very blessed that the room that I work in has a very, very large 7-foot by 7-foot window. It doesn't face north, it faces south.
Yeah.
Actually, not really south, because my house is kind of kitty corner. It's not like north, south, east, west. It's almost like it's at a perfect angle. So it's kind of southeast. And so it's really great in the winter because the sun gets low. And so the thing that I have to watch for more in that room is that I do have to have kind of a sheer shade, because sometimes the sun is too bright in there. But yeah, I don't do well under lights. Even with really good Kelvin scale lights, it's just not the same. It's just not. I did learn recently, though, that my glasses, because of my former corporate work, I worked at a computer a lot, and so I had the blue filter on my glasses. Not going to do that anymore, because I didn't realize how strong it was until I was driving, and I took my glasses off, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, everything is just kind of yellow, and now it's not. And I've been, oh. I said, well, then what's it doing to my paintings? Is it artificially making me have them be more warm than they really should because of what I see through those glasses? So now I don't have filters put in my glasses anymore.
When you have cataract surgery.
I know, I'm so ready, but the doctor says, no, not yet, it's not time. So yeah, I'm ready for that.
My doctor called me after my first surgery in my eye. He said, how are you doing? And I said, I'm distraught. He said, why? I said, all my whites look kind of purple. He said, let me explain. You now have the vision of a baby. It is clear. Your whites are clear. You can see yellow for
Yes,
years.
very yellow.
And then I
Mhm.
went, oh my God, is my art just horrible now?
And how did it change? How did your art change after surgery?
It really did not.
Oh, thank
because
goodness.
my whites were still white, but it was shocking.
I bet.
It's like your glasses.
Yeah, yeah. My sisters told me that, and you know, like a lot of people ask me, well, how did you get into pastel? Complete happenstance. My sister, who had moved from New Mexico to Texas, had wanted to go to a pastel class by an artist that was here in Texas that was also part of the Pastel Society in New Mexico. But she was new to town and she didn't know how to get there. It was to she knew we had to go to Bastrop. And so she says, will you take me? And I'm like, fine, I will take you. I'm not going to like it. So here I am, you know, 11, 12 years later. Yeah, still eating crow. Yeah, yeah, not going to like it. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't put them down since.
What did you do prior to pastel?
Acrylic and watercolor, mostly acrylic though. And then always graphite. I always worked in charcoal and graphite. And that's what I did like through my time in college, just to make a little extra money on the side, is I would do portraits in graphite for people and just make, you know, a little money here and there, some walking around money.
Are you also producing paintings while you were in the software industry?
Absolutely. This was my sanity. Yeah, yeah. The last 10 years of work that I did for the software company I was with were absolutely brutal. It's especially since COVID, it was very, very hard. There was also a lot of travel involved. So I spent probably a year in Denver. I spent 3 years going back and forth to Detroit. I did one project that we went around the world. So we went to Singapore and Indonesia and Dubai. And, you know, the great thing about pastels is you just kind of set them to the side. You get back and they're ready to go. There's no waste unless you drop one and you break it. But then you can put it all back together with a little water, you know. So, but yeah, this was my sanity because I would lose time. And I would lose track of where I was. And so I would often take, you know, just a few things with me, you know, even when I was traveling, just so that I could have that solace, because this is what kept me sane. Yeah.
You mentioned that you have a show that you're judging coming up, that's pastel.
Yes, yes.
At the Texas Pastel Society at the Coquini, just down the street from here off on Melrose and McCullough, mid-November. So go to texaspastelsociety.org, and there's a prospectus if you want to take a copy. If you're a member, the member show, Annalisa has graciously obliged us to be our judge. So,
No pressure.
Get inspired. We have a few Texas Pastel folks here at Harvard, and it's only a little flyer there.
Yeah.
Table, so come join us.
Mm-hmm.
Love to have you.
Yeah, and that's something that's very important. And I'd also like to echo what Tom said, is it's these pastel societies. So I learned pastel through this pastelist that my first introduction was, and she had moved from, or she actually lived in Texas the whole time, but she was a member of Pastel Society of New Mexico, and she had a little half-day workshop, and that's where I was introduced to it. But it was the Austin Pastel Society, the Central Texas Pastel Society, Pastel Society of New Mexico, all of these groups that so graciously teach each other and bring artists in from everywhere for workshops, and that's how I learned, you know, plus a lot of trial and error. A lot of trial and error, and just not being afraid to make a mistake. And the great thing about pastels, especially if you work on board like I do, it's not wasted. You know, I can wipe it off. I get to wet washcloth. I wipe off as much as I can, and then I just put more pumice over it, and off we go again. Yeah. So. Sorry.
When you say board, do you mean MDF?
No, it is not MDF. It is gator board. It's a wood veneer, super light. Really, really, really light. So it makes it really good. Like when I'm doing these really big ones, they're not too hard to manage. But yeah, because it is a wood veneer, it's really resilient, you know. And you can put so many different colors on them. I start with a black board to begin with, and then just go over it with whatever color I want, or sumi ink black. But yes, it's the forgiveness of them is really sold me. And so I buy the boards in 4 foot by 8 foot sheets and have them cut into something that's more manageable. So I usually have them cut in 4x4s, and then I cut from there. And that's why I have all these really unusual sizes like this, and you know, some of these other ones, because I can cut them to whatever size I want. which is really nice, which you're limited with a lot of the papers.
I'm impressed with how organized it is. You must have spent hours and hours, you know, sizing the images for this perfectly on the wall here. I mean,
Oh, that's Prudence. That's not me, that's Prudence. That's 100% Prudence.
Take a bow.
Take a bow, yes.